Hey there, good people, and welcome back to the DNP Podcast. I'm your host, Debo Agbede, and I'm ready for another week of NFL action. This episode will discuss the recent news that Jaxson Dart is now the New York Giants starting quarterback, also the Detroit Lions, and whether their Monday night win proved they're just as good as they always were. And as I'll do every week, picks for 6 games in the weekend against the spread in our Pick 6 section. This pod is available on Spotify and on podcasts, so follow on those platforms and give an honest rating. Like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube so you can stay up to date with each upload. So, the New York Giants dropped a bombshell on Tuesday when they made the decision to bench Russell Wilson in favor of their first-round rookie quarterback Jaxson Dart. This comes after the Sunday night loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, leaving the team 0-3 to start the year. So, when looking at his stat line in those first 3 starts, we've got 3 touchdowns and 3 picks, which all of those touchdowns came against the Cowboys, and we've seen what the Cowboys' defense has been in the opening weeks of the season. Not very good. Caleb Williams had a field day, and based on what I said about him a couple of weeks ago, slightly shut in the mouth, but we'll see how the season goes for Caleb Williams. In terms of his passer rating, Russell Wilson wasn't exactly too hot. You see his third down passer rating, which is scaled between 0 to 158.3. He had 54.9 passer rating on third down, and then his red zone, which was we saw on Sunday night, wasn't exactly impressive. Is in the whole 3 weeks that he's been starting, 39.6 out of 158.3, based on how that stat is calculated. So I think it's fair to say that this was based on the play. Russell Wilson hasn't exactly played, winning football, to say the least. If you're not being able to execute on third down or show any form of offense other than the moon ball, which he has, I believe, the second most attempts in the league past 10 yards. So, it seems like as currently situated, as currently built in his career, Russ is kind of a bit of a one-trick pony at the minute in terms of how he's able to actually effectively play in this league. Like, if you're watching Red Zone for that Cowboys game or watching the game in general, you're seeing, highlighting the Giants-Cowboys game, deep, which obviously, when you're playing a defense that allows those sorts of plays, it's like, fair enough, like, keep doing what you're doing. But in those other 2 games, the Commanders weren't exactly allowing it. The Chiefs definitely, as a defense, weren't exactly allowing it. So to make the move the Giants made, I think it's probably the right thing to do. Whether they should have started the season with Russ is obviously another question. I would say, you have to put the veteran in. If you sign them, if they're on the roster. In the case of having Jameis, having Russ, and having Dart, you bring in Russ to start. And that's kind of another thing that I'll point to in this discussion, is Russ's career as a starter done? Because it feels like this was almost the last chance, right? Because this is the third time in 3 years where the team has definitively said, yeah, Russ, you aren't the starter anymore. Go a couple years back to the Broncos season, where you've got many times Sean Payton's chewing out Russ and basically berating him in front of the live TV cameras. And then last year, not as much as that, but definitely a decline in terms of how the team performed, where they're 10-3 and they're looking really good for the playoffs and the Steelers, and then 4-game losing streak and an absolute, not to say thrashing, but it wasn't exactly a competitive game in the wild card against the Ravens. And then now the Giants, his last drive essentially is throwing a ball into the tunnel on a second goal, and that 4th and goal where he's doing a crossbar challenge. I mean, it was the game at that point, and he threw the game away. And when you're trying to energize a fan base and energize even a locker room and the players in the locker room who saw Dart play well in preseason, obviously that's preseason, but you're actually seeing a chance to reinvigorate and bring in a sort of change in the attitude or change in the mood. Because I think throughout Russ's career, at least through the latter days of Seattle, even the early days, or not early, but even those days in Seattle where they made that Super Bowl against the Patriots, and it's 1 yard line or even half yard line, and you've got Marshawn Lynch in the backfield, and it's Russ who kind of tries to make it about himself, you could argue, and throws that interception to Malcolm Butler for the runner-ups medal in the Super Bowl. And since that time, it feels like Russell Wilson's kind of had a couple years of great play, and those latter years in Seattle to Denver to Pittsburgh and now to New York, it just kind of has been like a very clear trajectory. The stock's going down, and in considering who Russell Wilson is inside and outside of football, of the sport, is like, can you keep that sort of individual in as a backup? Because if you're not bringing him as a star, and we've seen many star quarterbacks go down, or starting quarterbacks go down for these teams, and I wouldn't give too much of a chance that any of them would make the call to the Giants and say, hey, can we give us a couple picks for Russell Wilson? Because he's a very, as I said, one-trick pony. It doesn't seem like he can actually operate within the realms of an offense or within the structure of an offense. He still tries to make the plays that he did in his younger days, making the obviously great scrambles out, and being a dual threat that he just isn't able to be at this moment in time at the age of 36. So I definitely think, in terms of Russell Wilson's career as a starter, and in that sense career in the NFL, it just does seem that his time's up. His time's up in terms of being the starting and general quarterback in this league, because you don't bring Russ in to be a backup. He's too much of a celebrity. We saw it with Cam Newton. Whenever Cam Newton was signed somewhere, he was signed to start. Mac Jones took the job, but Cam Newton wasn't in the picture after that, because once you keep Cam around, the question's always going to be, when a player goes up, it's like, oh, well, he's not playing too well, so let's bring in Cam, obviously former MVP. Same thing with Tim Tebow. Didn't exactly have the great play in the NFL, but because of the star he attracted in college and the kind of name value that he had, it's like, we don't want this guy to be a distraction. Similar thing with Colin Kaepernick, is that it just became that, he's not. He's within the top 64 of quarterbacks. You're talking about being a star or being a backup, but because all of the outside noise and all of the outside conversation that it would bring, it just doesn't seem like it's fitting or fair to our starter in this case to bring in someone like Russell Wilson. So he's obviously on a 1-year guaranteed deal. I believe it was 2 years on the deal, 2 years, 28, I do believe, but 14 of that guaranteed. So I wouldn't be shocked if Dart plays well in those first couple of games. If he does, and Russ is just kind of let go, or I don't see him being on an NFL roster past this season, with all due respect. So what does this mean for the Giants? Obviously, making the move. It's a new era now. You've committed yourself. You've hitched your wagon to Jaxson Dart now, and I think it's whether it's the right time or not because of facing the Chargers. Personally, the way I see it is, there's no point waiting for easy games to kind of bed your rookie in. It's like, well, bring him in, because it's the NFL. There's no layups in the NFL, right? Even if they waited a week, let Russ start against the Chargers this week and have him go have his debut against the Saints. It's still a case of, well, the Saints aren't a layup because they're an NFL team. Obviously, they're easier than the Chargers, but I just don't see it as a reason to delay what's seemed necessary. And I think this definitely, whether you smell the desperation from Daboll and the coaching staff, is kind of like, well, we need to move forward now with this new guy because it's not going to work anymore with Russ. So get Dart in. Obviously played well in the preseason. You've given him the whole of the week, which is good. It's not like he's coming in mid-game where it's like, oh, I took second team reps all week and I don't have the same sort of chemistry that I would have otherwise if I have the whole week of first team reps. He's got the whole week of first team reps, throwing to Malik Neighbors, throwing to Wanda Robinson, all of the top options that he wouldn't really have had reps with during the year because he would be playing second team or scout team in practice. So I definitely think this is the way to do it, not to say, oh, Russ got hurt, all right, throw the kid in. It's like, okay, you now have the week to prepare as the starter for the team going into, what is definitely a suffocating team and a suffocating defense to go up against. But, better now than later, better late than never, but, sooner rather than later, all that sort of stuff. Like, let's get Jaxson Dart reps, in-game, live reps, because, as Dion said on the New Heights podcast, obviously not referring to Shador, but you don't learn as much on the bench as you would playing in-game. And even when you've had quarterbacks that have maybe spent their rookie year or first couple of years of their career sitting on the bench and, learning under a starting quarterback, there is still a gradual sort of process of, okay, I'm in the game now. So getting the reps now, I think, is the right call. And it's a chance to, hey, give the fans and the whole roster even something to, okay, we've got this kid in now, we've got a quarterback, we'll see how he does. He's got the sort of name value and he's got the whole Big Apple vibe to him. So I think, this is definitely something to bring about at least some good hope, some good vibes around New York, which there hasn't really been, because last year there was the whole, Saquon's gone over to Philly and he's won them a Super Bowl. Even this year now, it's like, we're stuck with Russ, and Daniel Jones has gone off to Indianapolis and he's 3-0 and he's one of at least top 10 performing this season. Whether he's a top 10 quarterback still remains to be seen, but definitely if you're ranking based on form the top 10 quarterbacks so far this season, Daniel Jones is firmly within that mix and firmly in that ranking. So the Giants fans need something to hold on to and something to look forwards to, on Sundays, rather than just seeing Russell Wilson do crossbar challenges like he's a sideman or something, but with his hand, and in an NFL game or Sunday Night Football on fourth and goal in the fourth quarter, handing the game over to the Chiefs. So and I guess, to be fair, I did promise my mate this, that when discussing the Giants and whether it's the right time to play Dart in because it's the Chargers game, well, the Giants have so far been their biggest opponents. In terms of, the Giants are their own biggest problem. So there you go, Zach. You're welcome. I've given you the shout now. So the Giants have been so negative when it comes to the conversation. Now this is a chance for things to go in the right direction and the right sort of mindset and trajectory for the team, and not shoot themselves in the foot and be their biggest opponent, being the man in the mirror. So I would say, this is the time. This is time for the Giants to go and prove people wrong and shut people up and say, hey, the Browns were able to beat Green Bay this past week, so we can do our own shocks, and we can go into a game, welcome them to MetLife, which is another element of the Chargers coming over cross country. That's always a factor when it comes to these sorts of games. So the Giants have an opportunity here to really send a statement out that, okay, this Dart era is going to start the right way. So here you go, New York. Show up. Stand up to be counted. Come on, people. So, in this section, I just kind of want to give the Detroit Lions their 10s, because on Monday night, they made a trip to Baltimore to face the Ravens, and they came away winners in what was a really impressive outing for the team. think they were obviously dominant on the ground off the back of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery combining for 224 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns on the ground. And it's fair to say that the Lions were always going to be fine, because when you consider the fact that they obviously have Dan Campbell as the coach and the players on the field are still the same in terms of it's Jared Goff at the offense, as I said, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Monroe caught a touchdown and made that very vital 4th down catch for the team in the 4th quarter. So it's just like it's the same team. So I know obviously there were a lot of worry when both Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn leave for head coaching jobs. And as I said, pre-season, despite not thinking they'd win the division, and in fact maybe even making an amendment to not have them in the playoffs after the Micah Parsons trade, and feeling good after week 1, obviously, when they go to Lambeau and kind of get, easily handled by the Packers. But in these past 2 games, putting up 52 on the Bears, putting up 30 really necessary, with 38 as a kind of exclamation point in that final touchdown, or 31, but then 38 in terms of paying this icing on the cake, so to speak, at the end of the game for David Montgomery. It just kind of makes you think, okay, so the Detroit Lions they're still there, still the same old Lions they have been for the past 3 years, because that was a really impressive showing and a kind of statement to say, just because just because we lost our coaches doesn't mean the ones we brought in don't fit the culture, don't fit what they're trying to build and what they're trying to maintain, at least in Detroit, because that was from the first quarter to the last quarter. There wasn't really a point in your head where you're going, the Lions look out of place here, like they did in week 1 against the Green Bay Packers. They're definitely going to they're definitely going to come away with something, or at least not get moved around. So that was a very good showing from them. Mahogany and Ratledge in the offensive line interior. It's kind of okay. They're getting themselves very acclimatized now to the NFL is, especially Ratledge, who's their pick from this year. And mate, I haven't even mentioned the defense, because getting 7 sacks in Lamar Jackson is no easy feat for any team of any quality, and especially in the AFC North. I don't think you could find another 7-sack game on Lamar Jackson, who has been the most elusive quarterback and most elite runner of the ball. The fact that they're able to make the coverage so that he couldn't elusively throw the ball to someone, and he was under duress for the whole time, for the whole game, and being able to get to him, and then Aiden Hutchinson with that peanut punch on Derrick Henry, which in itself maybe is becoming a bit of an issue for the Ravens, because that's 3, I believe, in all 3 games Derrick Henry's fumbled the ball, so that's something that definitely has to be looked at. But still, focusing on Detroit, I think you look at what Gibbs, Montgomery, Monroe, Goff, Aiden Hutchinson, Brian Branch, you go through the roster and you're saying, yeah, this is one of the better rosters in the league, and they've got Cleveland this weekend. Well, you can't just write that one off as a W, but you can definitely say back on the back of Monday night that is a game that they should win pretty comfortably, and the Lions have never really been a team that struggled with being flat track bullies and being who they're supposed to beat, because if you go back to the start of last season, they're the first in wins, they're the first in points scored, and they have the best point differential since the start of last season. So you look at that Lions team and you're saying, yeah, this is business as usual for us. And after the Browns, they've got the Bengals. That's now a Burrowless Bengals for the foreseeable future. The Chiefs on the road at Arrowhead. They just won at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore, and then the Bucks. That's definitely out of their next 4, that 4th game is definitely one that you circle on the calendar saying, wow, that's going to be a real heavyweight battle between those two teams. 2 very potential division winners coming out of that one, going head to head. So yeah, I think when you look at this Lions team, you have to, as myself who didn't think that the level was going to be maintained, I have to hold my hand up and say that no, this Lions team still have the elite running game and line of scrimmage play, and they still have their trickery that you might have thought was, leaving the building when Ben Johnson left. That, okay, John Morton can still, call those sorts of plays when the time is right, and say, yeah, this is the Lions culture now. This is who the Lions are. With Dan Campbell, it's not a case of we lose our coordinators and we're gonna fall away and wilt away and not compete as much. It's like, no, this is who the Lions are now. So I think that's definitely one that has to be taken on board for those of us in the future who make these sorts of picks and make these sorts of predictions going into a season, that the Lions are just going to be thereabouts when the season's about to end and the playoffs are at their late stages. The Lions are, as long as they're healthy, are going to be a team to be reckoned with in the NFL. Alright, time for the pick 6, and you know what, I'll just take this time to kind of address something that happened at the weekend. So if you couldn't tell, I'm just in the movie here. I'm a Falcons fan. See Julio, got the Michael Vick display there, and then the Deion Sanders one, then the map of Atlanta with pointing to where the Mercedes-Benz Stadium locates. So obviously there was a result that wasn't too kind, and Falcons 0, Panthers. Almost swore there. Don't want to make this. Don't want to make this a swearing thing. But yeah, 30 points to nothing, shutout. So that was obviously very disappointing, especially coming off the back of what was a very impressive and a very hope-filling win on Sunday night against the Vikings, kind of to come back and go to the Panthers, who were 0-2 at the time and weren't looking too impressive, and to just kind of don't even know what words to put to it. Just disappoint. Just bring the mood down. Like obviously releasing this on Thursday, recorded this on Wednesday. I'm still feeling the pain, still feeling hurt, and just right out, just almost disgusted, really, with how the whole thing and the whole game just developed and came out. I would say it's obviously Penix's first bad game out of 6, I would say, in terms of his performance. Just missing open guys, missing throws, and there was always a part of his game, like there were a lot, those happen prior to what happened on Sunday, but this is one where I was like, okay, he just seems just out of our sorts. So he's still young in this league, still just his second year, first full year starting, so I'm not going to write Penix off in terms of what the Falcons do this year. Well, you can have your opinion whether to write them off in terms of playoff contention this year. You have a very good reason to, because any team that loses to the Panthers, let alone gets a 30-point shutout on them, isn't really of playoff caliber. But I know my boys are better than that, and going into this weekend against the Commanders team that won't seem to have Jaden Daniels and doesn't seem to have McLaurin either, it's a right time to right the ship and move forward with a win and go into the bye with the Bills on Monday night coming after, and show the world that is not what the Atlanta Falcons are. We're a much better team than that. So obviously a very disappointing one, but yeah, the onus is on the team to right the ship and show they're better than that. So, on to the actual section, and what the actual purpose of this section is the pick six. So, last week was obviously, well, not obviously, but it was a bad week. It was a very poor selection for me, starting out Patriots with 5 turnovers. Like, come on, lads. Yeah. Oh, I want to believe you're better than that at least. So, obviously a young team, and the Steelers, the Steelers they didn't go for the juggler and win this game. Like, if you're getting 5 turnovers, you should win by more than 7. So I'm not exactly impressed by what the Steelers were last week. The Packers minus 7.5. Well, that's a team that was leading by 10-0 pretty much the whole game, or going into the fourth, and then one pick and game flips on its head, and you're just looking back saying, how on earth the Packers losing to the Browns? But hey, that's the NFL. It happens. Cardinals at Niners minus 1.5. Niners minus 1.5. Win by 1. Brilliant. That's just what the doctor ordered, isn't it? Obviously getting the safety to give them the extra 2 points, having to win off a walk-off field goal. Fair enough. That's obviously those are the beats you have to deal with. The beats I don't want to have to deal with, or the beats I'll definitely not stand for, and just kind of go in my head and say, of all the things that could have happened. Because Rams plus 3.5 against the Eagles. Just, even with getting the field goal block, just don't let them return it for the touchdown to then have them cover. Like, what? Of all the things that could happen for that pick, that spread, that covering of the spread not coming in, it's just ridiculous. They're up 26 to 7.5. The Rams don't cover. It's moving on. Raiders at Commanders minus 3.5. That's the one that came in. Yay, happy days. We move. And then Jets at Bucks minus 6.5. Again, the Bucks were comfortable and cushy. And then they have a field goal block return for a touchdown. It's craziness. And they also win off of a walk-off field goal. So it's just like, it just seemed like it was a collection of bad beats. At least the Rams one, 100% for sure, was just of all the things that could have happened for this not to come in, and it didn't. So you know what, we move. It happens. 6-11. Of the year, and the pick six. Just I need to do better. Go back to the dressing room, go back to the whiteboard, and recalibrate and get things right. And I believe I have with this week's selection. So just you wait and see. We're gonna turn that 6-11 into a 12-11 with a 6-0 week. Let's bring it home, people. So this week, first up, Jaguars plus 3.5 at Niners. I would say the Jaguars are a team that are they're 2-1. They're doing really well. They've got a little issue with regards to their receivers still. I think Brian Thomas Jr. does need to get involved a bit more, but I think the run game with Etienne and Tutin's doing really well. And there's a defense that still has some heavy hitters to go, and this is still a Mac Jones-led 49ers team, at least at the time of recording. So they're plus 3.5. Like the Niners aren't going to run away with this one, especially considering the Nick Bosa ACL out for the season now. So the Jaguars can easily keep that one within a field goal at the minimum and come away giving me an extra one against the spread that I desperately need. Number 2, Browns at Lions. Lions minus 8.5. We know what the Lions do against teams that aren't exactly at their level, and even teams that are close to their level but still can't maintain it. Because last 2 games is a 52-point blitz against the Bears. The Ravens definitely at their level put up 38. The Browns cannot keep up with that Lions offense no matter how much they try. Even in the win they got last week, that's because the Packers spittled and, stepped on the banana peel. Trap game, talking about undefeated seasons. and the Lions don't have such problems, and especially going to Ford Field in Detroit, there's nothing in my mind, even though I said it last week, but the Lions don't play with their food. They're killers, they're predators, and they go for the jugular, and that's what I believe they'll do with the Cleveland Browns on Sunday when they go to Ford Field. Third one, Bears -1.5 at the Raiders. This is kind of two teams that came in with a lot of promise in the season and a lot of we can impress here and do something this season. And out of the two, I think the Bears have a more, sustainable approach in terms of what Ben Johnson's able to do on the offense, and they seem like things clicked on Sunday, obviously against the Cowboys defense, and we'll get to them later, but the Bears definitely seem like a team that can put up the points against the Raiders defense that I don't think the Raiders can replicate the other way around. So obviously 1.5 spread, so it's not exactly one that's too much one way or the other, but I do see the Bears coming away with the win, and unless there's another 1 point walk-off field goal, which I'd like to say isn't likely, I think the Bears are a good value to cover this spread and win this one. So yeah, I'd love that to happen, and love that for that to come in. Number 4, Titans +7.5 at the Texans. These are two 0-3 teams. Who would have thought that about the Texans coming into this season? But I definitely would say it's a divisional matchup, so those should be close and should be tight affairs. And the Titans' defense is still one that can, other than last week, keep it games close. And I mean, the Texans' offense aren't operating at anywhere near the level that the Colts' offense is. So, if anything, even if the Titans' defense wasn't as good as otherwise advertised, the Texans' offense don't seem like they're capable of being able to take advantage of such deficiencies on defense, because that interior line still an issue. CJ Stroud, I'd say, is a victim of his circumstance in terms of what's around him, because obviously we need a Jaden Higgins and a Jalen Noel to step up, and even just a run game that isn't Nick Chubb, that's multiple severe knee injuries removed, and the Woody Marks, the young rookie who we still need to give time to see whether he can fully impact the game the way that's necessary. So I think +7.5, I know it's in Houston, but that just does seem like a very big spread for a game between two teams that I don't believe are that far in terms of quality. So I'll take that Titans +7.5 quite comfortably right now. Fifth one, Vikings -2.5 versus the Steelers in Dublin. Well, congrats to the Irish people for getting the game in their ends. That should be a very nice atmosphere, and obviously the Steelers are a very obviously Mr. Rooney owns them, kind of almost an Irish, so like it just feels like Ireland's team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think that will definitely be a very interesting game to watch in terms of how the fan split is, because obviously with international games, being an international fan myself, if you couldn't tell already, I think those tend to be quite, a celebration of the NFL, getting a lot of different fans of different teams together, and there's more of a, okay, I'm an English person with an NFL game around, I'll go watch the game, see what it's about. Same thing with like an Irish person, like, hey, it's in Ireland for the first time ever, it'd just be nice to go watch it regardless of who's playing. So it'll be interesting to see whether the Steelers can maintain a home field advantage, but I just think even regardless of the fact that it's Carson Wentz starting, I just think the Vikings are just a much better team, and this is a neutral field, so the 2.5, I think the Vikings are a 2.5 point better, more than 2.5 points better than the Steelers, because the way the defense is playing isn't exactly great. The way the offense with Aaron Rodgers and Arthur Smith, I just don't think that's exactly one that's going to stretch the Vikings too much in terms of the run game, which is how the Vikings had issues with the Falcons last week. I just don't think the Steelers have the run game that's able to affect the Vikings in such a way. So I think they'll take that -2.5 quite comfortably for the Vikings there. And last but not least, pick 6 out of the 6 that I've got here. Packers -6.5 at the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. Yeah, this is another one where the Cowboys defense in all the games really, they just said, you can't stop us, or you can't stop whatever team they're facing, especially the Giants one, which was, I think, the most egregious out of the 3 losses out of the 3 games that they've got, because obviously they beat the Giants, but out of the 3 games that the Cowboys defense has played, the Giants one is the most like, what, you let them put 37 up on on you? Like, there's no hope for that sort of team with that sort of defense in any sort of competitive manner against a Packers team that, despite obviously disappointing last week, well, they are a young team that is capable of those sorts of slip-ups, with a Browns team that is doesn't have much threat, or they don't perceive to have much threat. The fact that it's a Sunday night game, the fact that it's a Dallas Cowboys team that has obviously got the whole story with Micah Parsons coming back, there's not going to be any team or any player on that Packers team that's not, giving this one its full focus, especially after last week, and giving it its full just due. And I just think the Packers are going to go into that game with a vengeance, and go into that game thinking we're much better than what we showed last week. And especially Jordan Love, who has had success in that stadium. Obviously, that first playoff game that he had, where they were able to put up 40, and the run game of Aaron Jones then, Josh Jacobs now, it just seems like, the Packers are going to go into that one, and they're going to feast, and they're going to eat real well in that offensive side of the ball. And without CeeDee Lamb, it just seems like, I don't know how much offense that the Cowboys can put up on a motivated Packers defense. So, I just think that's a -6.5 that I can confidently say, as I sit here, and just generally that, Packers are going to win that one pretty comfortably. That's not going to be close going into it. Like, Brandon Aubrey can't kick you 20-odd points by himself. It was very unlikely, despite how far away the kicks are going to be. So there's my pick 6, and there's the 7th episode of the DNP podcast done and completed. Thanks for joining. Thanks for getting to this point. I'm thankful. Like and subscribe. Give an honest rating on the Spotify or the Apple Podcast if you're listening on either of those platforms, and I can't wait to see how this weekend falls. Hopefully the Falcons get a bloody win. I would much appreciate it. Bye bye.